Today's daf is daf tes. We are going to begin on daf ches amud beis, the last line. Our Rabbi says, Reuben shemach hasada l'Shimon shalei b'achrayis. Reuben sells a field to Shimon, but he says, I'm not taking any responsibility. There's no guarantee that if somebody comes and protests that there's a lien on this field, I'm going to take achrayis. And Shimon went ahead and said, fine, I'll take the land. Now, what happened? Like Rashi says, there are claims against the field. People make ir and say that the field does not belong to Reuben. So the halacha is like this. Before Shimon makes a chazaka, he can go ahead and retract and saying, I do not want to buy this field. I don't want to get involved. There's a lien or there's a potential lien. I am backing out. However, once he makes a chazaka, he cannot retract from this agreement because he made a chazaka. My time, what's the reason? There's an ear. Because Reuben can tell him, you bought a tied bag with basically, you bought a bag which is tied and the contents are unknown. So since you were aware and accepted that possibility, so by you purchasing a field without achrayis, you took that risk, and who cares if there's an error? You cannot retract from your agreement. When is chazaka? When does it? What is a chazaka? When does that apply? When it says when he walks upon the boundaries of the land to inspect, that's considered a chazaka. Now the Gemara says dafke. When could he say there's a difference if he makes a chazaka? Doesn't make a chazaka, he can retract or can retract. That's when there's no achrayis. When he takes achrayis, when Reuben takes achrayis, then loy. When Reuben takes achrayis, then Shimon, if were he to sell with a guarantee, this is not so, and Shimon could retract his agreement and refuse to pay for the land even after making a chazaka. The reason is that if the guy claims he succeeds with his claim to seize the land, Reuven will then have to return the sum Shimon paid him. So in order to minimize this whole Beis Din back and forth, the Beis Din allows Shimon to claim that there's no point of paying Reuven now, not because he's going to say, I have achrayis anyway, so maybe what's the point of laying out the money to anyways eventually get paid back? So therefore, he can retract his agreement to that transaction. Now, rather people say, no, even with a guarantee, Shimon cannot retract. Why? Because Reuven could tell him, show me first that the Beis Din authorized this claim, and then I'll pay you. The Shimon cannot claim that there's no point in paying Reuben now after he agreed for the sale, but before the third party seized the land. Because even if the land will be seized, it does not automatically follow that Reuben will have to reimburse Shimon. Now, the Gemara returns, we brought a steer yesterday, or the other day we said about payments of damages, is a kesef, a meitav, that damages are paid either with money or with meitav. He asked him a shaila. This is Yoshiv. From the extra word of Yoshiv, I learned the labish of a kesef. He can pay even with the worth of money, and which is mashma afilu subin, even bran, which we know is ziburius. It's like inferior commodity as a valid payment. So does it have to be made or not? So the Gemara says, they were talking about he only has subin. Obviously, if he only has subin, obviously he only has to pay a sibin. So the Gemara is about the Taiman. I would think, I'm going to let we tell him, Zil Tzach go and sell your brand. I simply kesem, bring me money. It doesn't matter what expense, bring me the money you owe. Mashmalam, you don't tell him that. Amar Ravasi says, money is like money. Money is like land. So why are you telling me this? For what halacha? Why isn't it get halacha than the ksaf menki karka? So the Gemara says like this: you made that. If you want to tell me that this is with regards to land, that the requirement of paying with one's land, that he has to, if he chooses to pay with land, he has to pay with meitav. How did Rav Huna already said this? Ella, rather, you're going to tell me a case like this: two brothers that divided the Yerusha, and one guy took land and one guy took money. Now the balchev of the father came and took away the land from the one brother. Now the Azalhai, so that brother can come. He could say, "Listen, I have to go now, and the guy seized my land. So now let's split the money as Yerusha, because my Yerusha was taking away." So if I think about it, Pshita, obviously, they're both children. So since they have a responsibility equally about the inheritance of their father, so they have an equal responsibility for their father's chayv. And if the Baal Chayv took it away, obviously the brother can come back and say that we need to reevaluate this. So now he could listen. Where says no, he could amri adrab. Now those who say fakert, so why? Because the guy who took the money could say like this: I took money. Why? Because if it gets stolen, I'm not going to come and ask you to pay for it. Why did you take a land? Because if somebody comes and takes you the land, you would not be reimbursed for my money. Rather, Rabbi is referring to a case of two brothers who divided the land. They inherited it from their father, and the father's Baal Chayv came and took the portion from one of them. Since the brothers carry a joint responsibility for their father's claim, the one whose portion was seized has a right to be reimbursed from his brothers. Rabbi's ruling teaches us that this may be done either by redistributing the remaining portion of the land or reimbursing him with money. But then he say one time, brothers were divided, and the brothers came and took one of the chilek. Again, and the Baal Chayv went and took one of their chalak themselves. Rav says that the whole chalukah is basically voided, and they have to redivide and redivide the Yerusha. Shmuel says no. Each brother, upon taking his portion viter, he relinquishes any rights to be reimbursed for the portion that were lost. And Ravasi says the third opinion says neto via bekarke. He says he takes a quarter of land and Revi b'moyis and a quarter in money. He gets half the money back. And the Gemara explains it out. Both the machlek is the whole Yerusha is redivided because he holds because our Hach and Shechalku brothers who divided Yarshim are similar to Yarshim, and therefore they continue a joint responsibility of their father's chayv. So any remaining land is divided equally between the brothers. Shmuel Amar Viter, why? Because our Hach and Shechalku the Kufis, they are much like people who are buyers. And each one is considered to be similar to a buyer who bought his portion without a guarantee that would have provided him with a right to be reimbursed if his portion was seized by a Baal Chayv. Ravasi says, Neto Revi B'Karka Revi B'Mais. Why? Because he had a machlek, he had a suffix if the Yerusha or like the Kuchis. Therefore you get half. What does it mean, Kikarka? The Indian Meitav. With regards to the paying of one's best quality land, and it's teaching us that one may choose to pay with money instead of land. Yeah, say V'chinim Ravasi. When it comes to mitzvah at shlish, once you spend up to a third. What does it mean, a third? And for the Gemara, so the Gemara says, if you say means one should spend up to 1/3 of his estate to perform a mitzvah, elamata, I'm going to ask you a question. So let's say a person had 3 mitzvahs at the same time. Should he give his entire estate away in order to fulfill those mitzvahs? For sure not. Rav Zera says Behidr mitzvah. We're talking about when it comes to Hidr mitzvah. That mitzvah up to 1/3 of the mitzvah. So by the Rashi says shlish min the go, shlish min the bar. Doesn't mean 1/3 from within. In other words, he calculates the cost of a standard item as 1/3 of that value and spends the total purchasing a more beautiful item, shlish min the bar, or as a 1/3 from without. 1/3 of the sum he ultimately spends should be the additional sum added in order to purchase a more beautiful item. And for the Gemara Teiko, it means that up to 1/3 more than the cost of the standard item comes from his own finances. But from that point on onwards, any additional sum spent on purchasing a more beautiful item comes from comes from Hashem himself. Hashem will reimburse for spending the additional sum. Mishnah. Call shechafti b'shmirasei, with regards to anything for which I became responsible for safeguarding to prevent it from causing damage. If in fact damage is considered as if sharti is niski, it's considered as if I actively facilitated that damage and I have to pay for it. If sharti b'miktsasi if I facilitated part of the damage, then chafti b'shlomi niski ki afshego niski, I am liable, I'm chayav to pay for the entire damage, as if I were one who facilitated the entire damage it caused. Nechasim she'ein bahen mila, property which does not have mila. Nechasim she'ein shel bnei bris, property that belongs to Yidden, or nechasim yichadim, property that is assigned, meaning of which the Gemara will explain. So one is chayav only with regards to damage caused to property for which, or he to use it for non-purposes, non-kedusha purposes. Now he would not be chayav for nechasim she'ein bahen mila, nechasim she'ein bahen bris. The Gemara will explain this. And one is chayav for damage caused in any place except for a domain designated exclusively for the use of one responsible for the damage, or one is chayav for damage caused in a domain designated for the joint use of the one injured party and the one liable for the damage. Now, when an animal or an item one is responsible to a safeguard causes damage, the one chayav for the damage caused by insufficiently safeguarding it is obligated to pay payment for for damage with the best quality of life. Anything for which I became responsible for safeguarding it to prevent it from causing damage, if it in fact causes damage, then if shati is niski, if it in fact causes damage, it's considered as if I actively facilitated the damage. If that's either a share or board that you give the chershet to the music and the damage, not. So if I want to my skin, what are we talking about? If you're talking about an ox that's tied and a boar which is covered, so the same thing, the same scenario would be by a fire. Let's say a fire which is like a coal, which is ember. So what's the difference between the two? There seems to be no reason to differentiate between them. Rather, if they say we're talking about a share which is untied and a barrier which is covered. So so what would be a similar scenario corresponding to a fire which has a flame? So the potter which is potter. So the potter is potter. The one is only potter if you give it gachelis. And then you fanned it. If you give a chershet b'katan, it will certainly cause damage. So what's the case over here? Rather, you're talking about a share which is tied and a burr which is covered. And the kabasi gabesh kachalas. The cover is ma'ishnach or ma'ishnach. So what's the difference between the two? The more expensive. Share, by the case, you could say by share darke lantuke. The manner of an ox is to free himself from being tied, and the typical manner of the bear is a pit becomes dislodged. Therefore, as it is negligent to transfer an ox or a pit to someone who is incapable or sufficiently safeguarding them, the one who transfers the ox or the flame to them is chayiv. This, however, in regards to an ember, as long as he leaves it alone, it will progressively dim. And the only way in which it will cause damage to somebody else if they flame it. Therefore, he's not chayiv. So my answer is, this is Hossam, there in the case of the fire, it's Fossa the Cherish Kagarim. Ultimately, the deaf-mute's handling of the flame causes the damage. As if it were not him involving the flame, no damage would have been done. Here, in the case of the shade and the bird, the bird, let's Fossa the Cherish Kagarim. The deaf-mute handling of them does not cause the damage. Rather, the damage was caused, even though they remain in exactly the same dangerous state in which the one who had transferred them to the deaf-mute did so. Therefore, the damage is as a result of that person's negligence, and he is chayiv.